there. I thought I would share something with you. Basically, we were asked in university in drama to create like monologues, but we were supposed to do it on our own weekends, like reflecting upon your weekend. I took a really sarcastic approach to mine. And I don't really have it memorized anymore just because it's been a really long time and it's like 6 pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it to you and I'll try and make it entertaining. Here we go. It's called The Land That Time Forgot. Labor Day weekend, I was kidnapped by my father and brother and taken to the land that time forgot in West Virginia. They didn't have to bind me with ropes since a 50-pound, shivering, slobbering, rust-colored dog sat on my lap as we traveled back in time from my home in Springfield, Virginia, to Paw Paw. Paw Paw is in the Great Divide of the Appalachian Mountains, so no signal for television or internet penetrates there. For my listening pleasure, I had either the choice of chirping crickets, preachers shouting on the radio, or scratchy vinyl records played on an antique turntable. My cell phone roamed constantly looking for a signal, like a nomad in a desert looking for water. I couldn't even call my friends to devise an escape plan or just to talk about stuff. My jail was the cabin. A cabin is what Neanderthals built to live in when all the nice caves are occupied. Basically, a cabin is a wooden cave with paneling. There's no internet, no television. So I had to complete this assignment with Stone Age tools, surrounded by cavemen. The first day I worked on this paper, I was pulled by my corner by my brother. He's a minion of mischief, or the trickster. And if he's not fed, Brother Trickster will lead this tribe into chaos. I refused his demands to be fed because I needed to work on this assignment. Sure enough, within hours, a small band of Neanderthals and their captive beauty, me, were fighting for our lives in the rushing rapids of the Potomac River. The ordeal began when the trickster convinced Tribal Chief Dad that he saw the signs in the sky that it would be a good day to put the canoes in the Potomac and try and catch a legendary bass, Old Arum, or Maria spelled backwards. I watched as the cavemen held poles over the water, muttering words I cannot repeat here, and drinking cans of fermented brew. I can only think that the fish held some kind of sacred religious importance to them, since they spent hours engrossed in this strange ritual. Finally, the cavemen gave up their quest to try and catch the crafty fish. I wondered if there even was a fish called Arum, but I didn't say anything for the fear that they would grab their poles and start fishing again to prove me wrong. I was glad we were going back to the paneled wood cave so I could finish my work, but I was misled. Brother Trickster convinced Tribal Chief Dad that we now had to paddle far down the river. I couldn't hear all that my brother said, but I imagined he was telling our father that we had to find the origin of the river, or some great treasure, or that we had to make this trip to atone for offending the godfish Arum. Whatever he said, it was enough to convince the tribal leader to travel downriver. The two men started paddling with me, their captive beauty, in the middle seat. The water was smooth and quiet for about an hour, but the tribal leader began to express worry that the water level was very low because of the recent lack of rain. Clever Trickster made fun of this caution, just as he had planned. The tribal leader continued the trip to save his honor. Half an hour later, we heard the first faint rumble of white water. The banks were so steep we couldn't go to shore to escape the river. And then suddenly, the water picked up speed and started pushing us towards black, jagged rocks, where the water poured over, turned white, and became a cascading waterfall. Tribal Chief Dad shouted loudly that we were going to fall off the edge of the earth. Brother Trickster just laughed and pointed to a spot where he said we could get safely through the rapids. Tribal Chief Dad looked at him and glared, not sure if he should believe that the trickster who just led them to such an evil place. After a moment's thought, he decided to follow the path suggested by the trickster. If we survived, I wondered if Tribal Chief Dad would realize something that I had known for years, that Brother Trickster was evil. As I suspected, the safe path was nothing but a trick meant to lodge the canoe helplessly amongst the rocks. It was then that I learned the next part of the trickster's plan, to force me to get into the water and get my only set of dry clothes wet. I found myself in the water dragging the boat off the rocks. As we continued onward, the sun was setting behind the mountains, turning the sky a purple-pink color. Darkness came quickly and it became impossible to see the rocks ahead. Now it began to sprinkle lightly, not heavy enough of a downpour to be considered rain, but just enough to increase the misery. In the fading light on the side of the river, I saw a large flat boulder that looked like a giant table. I wondered if the Neanderthals had only brought me upriver to sacrifice me on the stone altar. I taunted the Neanderthals with my understanding of their plot. Brother Trickster and Tribal Chief Dad tried to look puzzled, as though they pretended that they knew nothing about this sacrifice. I laughed at the feeble attempt at deception. An hour later, a full moon rose, and a bridge where we could land and escape became visible. The moonlight shining on the water formed a silver path through the rocks towards our destination. Brother Trickster said loudly that he had known a full moon was going to rise and light our way. I started to laugh at the trickster's claim and made fun of his supposed power over the moon and his ability to see the future. I stopped myself when I heard Tribal Chief Dad singing the praises of the Brother Trickster. When the canoes were on shore, I told the tribal leader that told me that the nighttime canoe trip had actually been an initiation ceremony to make me part of this tribe. Cold, muddy, and wet, I didn't say what I was actually thinking, and instead asked the great chief if I could be the first one to shower. Now that my initiation had been completed, he granted me this wish. Later I realized why the chief had been so quick to give me the privilege of showering first. The first concern of cavemen is to consume meat, not bathing. The next morning, I was hard at work again on my project. I didn't know what to do when I had to look something up. There's no internet in the place that time forgot. Tribal Chief Dad told me not to worry. He knocked a bleached ear skull from atop a stack of pre-20th century reference books piled upon a shelf. Apparently these books were the stone tools and bear claws used by primitive people to look up information in BI, or before internet. Aside from having to flip through dusty ancient text, I had added the difficulty of being distracted by Brother Trickster and Tribal Chief Dad, who had gone outside and were now shooting firearms, although I'm pretty sure they called them thundersticks. I did finally find information in the WorldScope family library encyclopedia that I needed for my paper. And it was also interesting to read about experiments being done that one day might enable men to fly like birds and heavier than air machines. Finally, the blast from the thunderstick stopped, and I thought I would finally have some peace and quiet to finish this assignment. Unfortunately, Brother Trickster, deprived of electronic stimulation, became fascinated with an obviously fake plastic bass on the wall, which he discovered that if he could make the fish's head move and sing "Take Me to the Water" if he pushed a button on its belly. And he did this over and over and over. Well, things got better though when Tribal Chief Dad called the trickster outside to help him for a few minutes. Immediately I leapt up and gutted the plastic fish. Brother Trickster and Tribal Chief became angry when they saw this sacrilege, but I reminded them they had kidnapped me against my will and brought me here. Under primitive conditions with only the aid of stone tool references. I guess they detected a slight tension in my voice and body language, because both ran outside in terror. Okay, I admit it, I was planning on gutting them too. I needed to calm down and focus on my assignment. After a few tries, I was able to place the needle in the vinyl record and fill the room with the scratching sounds of Rex Harrison and Julie Andrews singing songs from My Fair Lady. As the trip neared conclusion, this paper did also. I placed the ancient books back upon the sagging shelves, and atop that stack I replaced the bleached bones of the deer and head skull. After 3 days trying to read a paper, Stone Age tools, and pawpaw, while living amongst this tribe of Neanderthals, it was natural that I became a little bit superstitious. I mean, what's the harm? It's probably just an old deer skull that somebody found in the woods, but why take the chance? I repacked my bag and placed it in the car. A few hours later, I was back in civilization in the 21st century. I will never forget writing this paper in the land that time forgot. Alright, well, tell me what you thought, and obviously I was reading from a draft, so it was a little bit choppy, and there's like notes on here written by some classmates of mine. So, anyway, I hope you like it, and thanks.